the need for trade and the Nexus on the firearm issues. Now, I'm going to present in English, and I apologize. Apparently, there's no translator. So, if you have questions, if you have difficulty understanding, please just put your hand up, and we'll try and get everyone through this. So I'm gonna talk for probably half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and then because it's a workshop, I'm going to put you to work, and I'm going to ask you for some feedback on your thoughts on what I'm talking about here. So we'll get going. If there's no questions to get started off with, we'll go here. Okay, so this is me. My name is Alan Orr. I'm an instructor at a college in Lethbridge, Alberta. The program we have is called a Bachelor of Applied Science in Conservation Enforcement. And what that means is we train students to be game wardens or rangers or conservation officers or however you want to pronounce that. So they do a 4-year degree, and then they come out with a credential that allows them to work in the field as a conservation law enforcement officer. So that's what I'm doing now. I was a conservation officer in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is a province in the prairies of Saskatchewan, or prairies of Canada. I was a conservation officer there for just about 20 years. 11 of those I was in the field. I was checking hunters and anglers and making sure that people were not taking too many fish or deer or birds or what have you. So I have the field experience, and then the last 8 years of that career I was actually the training officer. So I would set up training for all the conservation officers in the province. So this is where I kind of got into a little bit more of the non-day-to-day field-related things. My education, that sometimes helps people kind of get a handle on what's going on. I have a Master's of Business Admin from Royal Roads University of Victoria in 2005. Which has nothing to do with my current job, really. I thought it might, but it doesn't. So, but anyway, I got one of those. And my initial education in this field was in 1982. I received a diploma from a small college in Saskatchewan. So I do have a bit of an educational background in this, but most of it is from my experience as an officer, and then some of the things that I've done as an instructor at the college. Okay, a couple of professional associations. Association of Natural Resource Enforcement Trainers, have been a member since 1993, and I'm currently a member with the Society for Wildlife Forensic Science, which is a fairly new organization, and it may be something that some of you might be interested in getting involved in. And if you want to write that down, if you Google it, you'll come up with the website, and it's based in the United States, and it's a lot of it is DNA based right now, but I'm trying to get them convinced that there's room in forensic science for ballistics and for the stuff that we're doing, which of course we know that's already in there, but I'm trying to convince them that they need to expand a little bit and include some of the stuff that we're doing. So that's kind of my professional background, and the reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to understand how I got to this point and why I'm standing up here in front of you speaking about this. In my job as an instructor, I was invited to attend some field forensic workshops. Now when I say field forensic, I mean learn about methods that officers can use out in the field to determine whether or not somebody has been involved in an offense. So this is not to avoid going to sending stuff to a lab, but to look at evidence. And in Canada we call it gaining reasonable and probable grounds. So if I look at some evidence, is there enough there to tell me that this person might have been involved, and can I go and speak to them? Can I seize a firearm, or can I deal with them in some other way? So that's reasonable and probable grounds. And that was a very interesting seminar, and that's where I first really understood how the ballistics worked, and it fascinated me that an officer could pick up two casings and look at it with something as simple as a 10-power hand lens and be able to tell that those two rifles or those two casings may have come from the same firearm or eliminated firearm. So I thought a lot about that, and I did some background on it. I actually put that into my college curriculum. I made that part of the coursework. And as I thought about it more and more, I wondered if there was another step. And so late one night, I was quite bored, and I Googled ballistic firearms and came up with Forensic Technology Incorporated, and got to know Stacy Stern, who's the sales rep for this area, quite well. And ended up that they asked me to co-author a white paper, which is on the webpage for Forensic Technology, that talks about the connection between the wildlife and the firearm. So that's how, if you've seen that, that's how that came to pass. Since then, Stacy and I have collaborated on a number of things, and we're hoping that by me doing a presentation here today, that some of the member countries will become interested in looking at the wildlife crimes and the wildlife evidence as valuable evidence to enter into their database and use along with the regular policing database. So that's how I got here. The purpose of this thing is to advise you or discuss with you the value of developing a network focused on wildlife crime or wildlife violations. I fully believe that there's a tremendous amount of value to policing agencies and to the resource agencies in having this developed. And a lot of people, when I talk to some of the different agencies across Canada, I talk to them and they say, well, we're not interested in that because that's just deer and fish and birds and things. And I'm hoping by the end of this session you'll understand that there is some great value to the different agencies. Okay, I'd like to determine interest from some of the policing agencies, see if there is interest in doing this, and that's going to be part of your homework afterwards. I am an instructor, as I mentioned, so I still give out homework even though you're not my students. You'll still get some. I want to gather some ideas for the next step. Where do we go from here, and how do we get there? And I'd also like to start developing a network of interested people, of people who might want to be involved or have some input into this, and see how we can develop something. So my vision, and I've shared it with Stacy and anyone else who listens, is for a global network for sharing casing bullet information based on wildlife infractions. And the goal, the vision of Forensic Technology and Vitipol and a number of other groups is to have this network across around the world. And I just want to throw the wildlife portion in as well. So I'm not looking to create something brand new. I'm just saying this is more data that you can look at and other sources of information for you to deal with. Now I have some pages here of a lot of text, and I apologize for that. When my students make slides like these ones that are coming up, I tell them it's not acceptable. But I wanted to make sure that you got the information. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the severity of the wildlife crime or wildlife poaching that goes on around the world, and most of it focuses on Africa with the elephants and the rhinos. But the markets are huge. There's a market for just about everything out there. But typically it's focused on the African wildlife. And so the points here that I want to make, wildlife crime is a big business. It's not something that when we typically think of poaching, we think of the person going out and shooting a deer or shooting an animal to bring home to eat. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about big business. We're talking about international networks, dangerous international networks. Wildlife and animal parts are being trafficked much like illegal drugs and arms, and that's absolutely true. There are there are networks throughout the world that will collect animal parts from places in Africa and ship them through the States, end up in Korea, Taiwan, that type of thing. Huge trafficking markets and trade routes. By its very nature, it's almost impossible to obtain reliable figures for the value of illegal wildlife trade. Experts at Traffic, though, which is a wildlife trade monitoring network, and they're part of the World Wildlife Fund. So you could look up the traffic on the World Wildlife Fund. Estimate that it runs into hundreds of millions of dollars annually, and I would say that that's a conservative estimate. I've seen estimates of billions of dollars annually in the trade of wild animal parts. There are reports out there that say that it's second only to the trade in illegal drugs. Others say, well, it's third behind illegal weapons and arms, but it's right up there. It's very, very valuable. It's very high cost across the world. So the point I'm trying to make is that I'm not just talking about the small stuff. I'm talking about global issues that happen for big, big, big dollars. Vienna, 26th of April of this year. This is a statement from the World Wildlife Fund website. Governments are meeting to discuss responses to global crime waves, which are urging countries to impose strict penalties for the trafficking of wildlife products like elephant, ivory, and rhino horn. So they're calling for strict and severe penalties for trafficking in elephant tusk and rhino horn. And the elephants and rhinos are kind of the flagship of the international trafficking trade. And so you see a lot of discussion on the elephant and rhino, but the problem is just the same everywhere. Right around the world, the problem is the same. You can go and look at antelope in Siberia, you can look at birds in Brazil. In Canada, Western Canada, we have a big problem with black bears being killed and their galls taken. So that is something that we can talk about. We don't have enough time in this session to talk about all the problems, but it's right around the world. We talk about elephants and rhinos, but really it's global. The Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice passed a resolution encouraging UN member states to make illegal trafficking in wild fauna for a serious crime and to ensure organized criminal groups are prosecuted. And that's a key, and that's the reason why the UN is concerned, is because of the criminal groups that are involved. And it's not just a small, isolated incident. It's big criminal groups that are involved in the drugs and the arms trade are also involved in the wildlife trade. And it's been seen in a number of places. Okay, so during the Crime Commission meeting, governments identified links between illegal trade in wildlife and timber products and other transnational organized crimes such as drug and arms running, human trafficking, money laundering, and terrorism. The people that are involved in the wildlife trafficking trade are the same ones that are involved in all the other bad stuff that's going on, the drug and arms trade, human trafficking, money laundering, terrorism. They're the same people that are doing that. The reason for that is because there are a tremendous amount of profits in wildlife crime, but the risks are quite low. The penalties are quite low. You consider somebody caught crossing the border with a bear gall, that is worth up to $10,000 when it gets to its final destination. Or if they're caught crossing the border with that same dollar value of cocaine. Well, if they are caught with the bear galls, they're not going to have nearly severe penalties if they're caught with cocaine. So what the organizations are doing is they're using the wildlife trade to launder money or to finance a lot of the drug stuff and the arms and that. So it's a source of easy money for them, basically, is what they're looking at. Okay, sorry, this is something I haven't used before. I'm just going to get used to it here. So, more off of the World Wildlife Fund, up to 30,000 elephants are killed each year for their ivory tests. And Central Africa governments will meet next week to address the ongoing security crisis, which is exacerbated by the proliferation of heavily armed poachers. So 30,000 elephants per year are taken out of Africa. Now, I could have thrown up a whole bunch of pictures of half-dead elephants and rhinos wandering around with their horns and their tusks cut off, but I don't want to make this an emotional plea. I want this to be logical, and I want you to understand from a policing point of view that it makes sense to connect this information together. Okay, that's just a small. 30,000 elephants seems like a lot. It's a small number compared to some of the other animals that are killed around the world. Wendy Elliott, who's the leader of WWF Campaign Against Wildlife Crime, says we're seeing that killing wildlife is increasingly connected to horrific violence against the rangers and community members standing between these criminals and the targets. Long overdue for the punishments to fit the crimes in these cases. And that's exactly right. What happens is that there are a number of rangers, particularly in African countries, who are killed trying to protect the animals, and we don't seem to pay a whole lot of attention to that. So they're talking about the ability to protect the rangers as well. Okay. Now, I've got a couple of videos that I'm going to throw on there. The first one is David Higgins, who is the manager of Interpol's environmental crime, and the second one is from the WWF. Produced a video, and it's on the Guardian website. So I'm going to run these, and you can hear from the experts that are involved in this on a day-to-day basis exactly what they think. So let's go ahead and get this one. Do not have internet connection? Sorry.
Excuse me one second.
Any questions or discussion at this point? I know it won't go for years or what.
Do not give me the Wi-Fi.
That's a good one.
I'm sorry. The Wi-Fi is not activated. That's why I cannot activate the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We'll just go on. Just carry on.
Sorry.
Okay, well, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this like watching videos all the time. Gives them a chance to come sleep. All right, so what we've got up to this point is a very, very, very quick, very brief look at the problems globally. We know that there are huge problems. We know that species are disappearing pretty much on a daily basis in different locations around the globe. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about my experience, or the experience that I'm most familiar with, having come from the field. Now, I guess I should point out that, yes, sorry, my apologies. I guess I should point out that I'm basically here on my own. I'm not being paid by anyone to be here. College is done and the students are gone, and Stacy invited me to come and talk, and so I'm not speaking on behalf of Forensic Tech. I'm not speaking on behalf of any government. I'm an interested citizen who has a bit of a knowledge background. So I haven't. My experience is my experience, and that's all I can really talk about with any kind of authority. So what I do know is that in the past there have been a number of informal studies that have been done through different organizations that I've been with. And basically what we know in North America, and I would suggest worldwide, is that there's a market for any kind of animal, any kind of fish, any kind of bird. We say that anything that swims, crawls, walks, or flies, there's a market for it. And that includes not only the animals themselves, but also eggs and young, old, feathers, any kind of part of any kind of animal, pretty much there's a sale for it. The commercial sales and habitat loss are the number 1 and 2 threats. I guess it doesn't make much sense to say the two things are number 1 threats, but those are the big threats. The loss of habitat and the commercial sales of animals are the biggest threats to these critters. And the commercial sales are what we're talking about here, obviously. Much of the illegal trade in wildlife involves crossing borders, whether it be interprovincial or interstate borders or international borders. A lot of it includes the transfer of animal parts across that. So with that crossing of borders, you tend to have a lot more serious fines, right? The other thing that a lot of people don't understand is that conservation officers or game wardens or rangers deal with criminal element every day. The people that we're dealing with are the same people that are doing the drug stuff or doing the arms. They're the same people. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that's something that a lot of agencies don't understand. A lot of agencies other than conservation enforcement agencies, they don't understand that the wildlife people are dealing with some pretty bad dudes as well. So that's basically what the North American experience has taught us so far. Now, coming from Saskatchewan, my little province of about 1 million people, so it's population-wise is smaller than a lot of the cities that some of you folks are from. So we're mainly a rural population. Most of us live out in the woods or on a farm or something like that. And between 2008 and 2011, there was an average of 202,215 hunting licenses sold. Now that's for all species. And the source for my information is from the annual report from the Saskatchewan Ministry of Environment. So these numbers are as real as they can get. Now, so we've had 200,000 hunting licenses sold on average. And this, I have a bad decimal place here. This should be 0.5%. So the decimal place should be right here. So half of 1% of licensed hunters, based on the number of individual charges that were laid, about 0.5% of the licensed hunters have been charged over that time. So on average, we had 912 individual charges. So I'm going somewhere with all this, so just hang in there. I'm not a statistician. If somebody is in here and they see problems with my numbers, just relax. And we're just making a story here, kind of thing. Okay, so informal studies, anecdotal studies, visits with other officers, discussions. We feel that approximately 10% of the violations that happen out in the field are detected by someone, whether it's a farmer, whether it's an officer, whether it's a police officer, whoever. We feel that about 10% of the violations that are conducted out in the field are detected. And of those, we feel that about 10% of those result in charges. So we're not looking at a great deal of success as far as the number of violations and the number of charges we have to get. So if you take the number from down here, this 912 individual charges, if we suggest that that's 10% of 10%, then we could say that there are over 90,000 potential firearms-related incidents in any given year, okay, theoretically. Which would say that there's about 9,029 detected, and approximately 10% of those will yield a violation seen. So we're pretty much back to that 912 that I just talked about. So taking those numbers, taking that just over 900 number, and again with my experience and with discussing with other officers and looking at some of the very informal studies that we've done, we feel that approximately 25 to 33, so a quarter or a third of the violation scenes that we will go look at have the potential to yield or have yielded usable firearms evidence. So whether it's a casing or whether it's a bullet head. And of course, anytime we find a dead animal that has been shot and left in the field, there's a good opportunity, there's a good likelihood that there'll be a bullet head. Hopefully there'll be a casing from the shooting site that we can use as well. So we feel about 25 to 33% of those violation sites we should be able to get some usable firearms evidence from. So conservatively speaking, if we look at the 25% of that, we could say that there are conservatively 275 wildlife violation scenes in Saskatchewan that could yield usable firearm evidence each year that we're not finding. Okay, we're thinking that there's somewhere around that number that would have evidence for us. So if we keep extrapolating, 1996, there was a study by Dr. Gary Bell on the safety of conservation law enforcement officers in Saskatchewan. This study was done to answer the question whether or not conservation officers should be carrying sidearms as a part of their safety equipment. The study concluded that yes, there was enough danger that sidearms should be issued, and as a result of that, we were issued sidearms. One of the interesting things that came out of there was that between 42% and 75% of offenders of the Wildlife Act have criminal records. Now the higher number, the 75%, was the number of night hunting charges. So when we would go out and check hunters who were jacklighting or spotlighting deer at night, 75% of those folks had criminal records. The regular Joe hunter who trying to escape home without tagging his deer or something along that line during the day, 42% of those people had criminal records. So if we were to say that even 50% of all Wildlife Act offenders have a criminal record, using that estimate of 275 potential sites, we could hope to add firearms information from approximately 137 known criminals annually. So is that beneficial to the policing agencies? I think probably. And this is what I want you to think about, is that there are other folks out there doing the same line of work as what the policing agencies are doing that can help you add to your database. Now, that depends on the on how active your wildlife enforcement is, and I know that in a number of countries around the world, it's not as active as it could be for a number of reasons. But in Canada, in the States, this is a definite possibility. Now remember, this is from a province of 1 million people. We could still add another 137 known criminals to that database. So I thought that was pretty cool once I came up with that. I thought that was pretty interesting. Benefits to the policing agencies. And when I say policing agencies, I'm talking about the Nailing Canada, the RCMP in most cases. We also do have a number of municipal or city police forces who there are a number of people, criminal element living in the cities, and they'll come out and they'll hunt, and we'll run into them. This is in my mind, it's a great opportunity to add to the database of the firearms in the hands of known criminals. We know that these folks have a criminal record, and we have their firearms, and we can get samples of those. In most cases, we're checking them because they've already done something wrong. So if we have the casings, and in a lot of cases, a lot of the violation scenes, we do have their casings, we do have their firearms, and if they're a known criminal, wouldn't that be great for us to be able to share that information with the folks that maybe deal with them on a criminal basis. The other benefit is to utilize law enforcement professionals who are dealing with firearms on a regular basis. I can assure you that the average conservation officer in Saskatchewan will handle more firearms in a hunting season than the average RCMP officer in Saskatchewan will during their career. And that's nothing against RCMP, nothing against policing, it's just a different line of work that we're in. And so to have some sort of a partnership where we can share that information, gather that information, and share it, I think would be just great for both organizations. And that goes for any other country as well. If your wildlife enforcement is separate from your policing, then there's a great opportunity to build a bridge there and get some good information. I'm sure there are a number of other benefits that you're going to help me come up with, and I'll add more in as I go here, as I give one of these presentations. But I see tremendous benefits to the policing agencies in just being able to increase your database. Okay, benefits to non-policing agencies. What we had hoped to do is to curb the cross-border, provincial or national trade of wildlife and wildlife species. Again, the bigger issues always cross a border, and if we can stop that, then we can help save some of these critters and also get information into these systems. We would be able to identify offenders who violate laws in multiple jurisdictions. So that means within the border, within a province, within a state, within a country, you'd be able to identify, and you folks know all this if you're familiar with the capabilities of the system already, where we might have somebody shooting deer in one part of the province and then moving down to another part, shooting deer down there. We can't even connect those at this point. So we'd be able to do that, which is similar to the presentation first thing this morning where they talked about the problems in Portugal and Spain. It would be the same thing but for wildlife, and probably with the same people actually. Identify offenders, jumped ahead here. Identify offenders who violate laws in multiple areas within a jurisdiction was what I was just talking about. Identifying offenders who violate laws in multiple jurisdictions, so those that go from province to province to province, state to state. Collect intelligence on trade routes and those people who trade illegally in wildlife. This would be just another, nail in the coffin, I guess. I would hope that we could use to stop this. So I think this is extremely valuable information, and it's something that's horrendously lacking in the wildlife enforcement area. And getting some of these systems up and going, I think, would be a great benefit to the wildlife agencies and to the policing agencies. But there are some barriers. And the barriers that I see, and in discussing some of this with the company, I think the barriers that we've discussed so far, one being infrastructure, and this wouldn't be any different than barriers that the policing agencies in some of the places are seeing. The infrastructure just isn't there in some places to provide security for the information, security for the equipment. I think that is a huge consideration that we would have to make, and if we were looking at putting this into a fish and wildlife agency, we would have to make sure that the infrastructure is in place before we do anything else, right? Obviously. The cost is a major consideration, and keeping in mind that for wildlife agencies, wildlife enforcement agencies don't have anywhere near the budgets that policing agencies have. It's not even close. It's a shoestring budget in most cases, and when I found out how much it costs to set up an entire lab, I went, oh, well, I guess we don't need to talk about that anymore because it's not going to happen. The cost to a wildlife agency in and of itself, at a provincial or state level, might be prohibitive. So we need to work around that. Jurisdiction is another one. In Canada, the majority of the wildlife enforcement is done by the provinces, by the individual provinces. The federal government does have wildlife enforcement, but they have other needs in other jurisdictions, other capacities that they undertake. The vast majority of it is done by the provinces, and the provinces, as far as the money goes, it's just not there. So you have two different levels of agency are trying to do the same thing. So that becomes a problem with the jurisdiction. And the last thing, believe it or not, is a buy-in or acceptance by the different agencies and even by the officers who are in the field. They don't believe that this is possible. And it's been interesting discussions that I've had with some of my fellow officers about the possibilities of this, and they don't see that that it's possible, first of all, and then of course you come up with all kinds of excuses for why it wouldn't work. But I'm surprised at the how tough it is to get a buy-in at the field level. So these are some of the barriers that I've seen, and of course, when there's a barrier, we just all we do is we see what we can do to overcome, right? We don't let it stop us. So, what I think would work, and what I would like to get people thinking about, and remember, I'm not representing anybody. I'm just kind of here on my own, just to kind of get people thinking about this. So, what I think would be some good ideas is to operate, or at least to start a network in an industrialized nation with reliable and secure infrastructure. I mean, if we're going to talk about setting something up, we should probably look at running some sort of a pilot project in an area that we don't have to worry about the infrastructure being a problem. And I know there's a number of systems in a number of countries out there already. So we would, you probably want to have that taken care of first. I think that as far as the cost goes, sharing the cost among wildlife enforcement agencies would be a must, or sharing them amongst the policing agency and wildlife agency. I think that knowing what I know about the budgets, at least in North America, I can't see it working any other way. It would have to be shared. And then that sets up, of course, all kinds of other jurisdictional problems and sharing information, that kind of thing. But I think the cost would have to be sharing. I think that a large national agency needs to lead the process. Smaller provincial or state organizations support it. So in Canada, there's a number of agencies with the federal government that might be interested in running this, and then having the individual provinces support by putting data in, by maybe a user pay system, something like that. So that's my thoughts on this, and I think the biggest thing right now at this point is to educate potential partners, educate the wildlife enforcement people that this is something that is worthwhile, and it's something that can be done, because a lot of them honestly have no idea that this technology is available. A lot of them don't even know that, believe it or not, you would think that when they work with bullets and casings all the time, and I'm just as guilty of this as anybody when I was in the field, they don't understand that a firearm will produce those characteristics on every casing and every bullet, or almost every casing and every bullet, that can be tracked back to that firearm. A lot of them don't even know that. So if you are dealing with wildlife enforcement agencies in your country, believe it or not, this is probably going to be something that you're going to have to start off with, and tell them that there's ways of matching these things back and forth, because people just don't know. So I guess what I'm thinking, and again, I'm just acting on my own here, but we've talked about setting something up or approaching agencies in Western Canada or right across Canada to set something up. And the reasons for that, and it's absolutely not written in stone, it's just some suggestion just for discussion, is that forensic technology is Canadian-based, and the reason that might be important is because the Canadian agencies might have a better buy-in because the company is from Canada. I don't know. It's just something that I thought might fit in well. We know for a fact that Western Canadian hunters travel across jurisdictional boundaries very easily. There's very, very easy transition. There's many roads across the borders, and the provincial borders in Western Canada. It's very easy to travel back and forth, and we know that they do. A hunter from Alberta, where I live now, can go to Saskatchewan, where I used to live, and buy a ticket, buy a hunting tag very easily, and they can go out and shoot whatever they want, basically, and then head back to Alberta quite easily. So that cross-border travel is very, very easy. There's many international hunters in Western Canada. During the fall season, when the birds are flying, when the geese are migrating, we had half of the state of Minnesota come up here. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating, but we had a number of people come from Minnesota to hunt birds in our area, and we had a number of times where we would charge them with something, and we wouldn't be able to connect with Minnesota, but I can guarantee you that if they were doing anything illegal in Canada, they were also doing something illegal back home, and there was no way of connecting them with the firearms evidence. So we would have lots of international hunters. The other thing is that I live there, so that'd be kind of improvement of something or other. Again, what I think is that federal government should lead. I've talked with Environment Canada. Environment Canada has a wildlife enforcement group. And in Alberta, Alberta is a province of 3 million people. There are 4 federal wildlife officers in Alberta. So they don't do a lot of as far as the percentage of hunters, they don't check out a lot of hunters. But they're overall, they're more of an umbrella group. And I discussed this with some of the local folks, and what they're doing is they're moving on up the chain of command to see if there is support at a higher level for doing something like this, where the federal government leads it and then the provinces buy in as they see fit. Now, obviously it's not as simple as that, but I think suggesting that each province could have their own setup, I think is not realistic. So if you're at all thinking about something like this for your country, for your organization, you might want to think about looking federally first, and then having a buy-in kind of the same as what Mexico's done with their policing systems. So that's kind of the world as I see it, as far as the trade goes. Now, honestly, we could go on for hours talking about the different animals and the different trade networks and that kind of thing. But I just wanted to give you a brief introduction into this, and I want to get people thinking about this. It's an education portion right now. There's a number of agreements worldwide already. We were talking about CITES earlier, which is an international agreement on the trade. In fact, just exactly what we're talking about here. And they meet annually. Their last meeting, they talked about the international trade as being a major concern. Saw the discussion that World Wildlife Fund has had. The UN has talked about it. Interpol for the last couple of years has said that this is a major concern for them, the trafficking of wildlife and wildlife parts. Hillary Clinton last year said that the US is going to make this a very high priority. And they're all looking for technological solutions. Now this, I can't see this, I'm not going to say that this is going to be the solution for everybody, but it's a piece of the puzzle. There's still a lot more that can be added. The DNA is an amazing science, and it's being developed more and more and more. I think this is a really good piece of the puzzle that can go along with some of those other things. So I'm just wondering right now if anybody has any specific questions. What I'd like to do after, we'll take a few questions if there are any, and then I'd like you to get into some small groups. Like I said, I'm a college instructor, and this is what we do. We get you into groups and have you work together and answer a few questions. So if you have questions now, we can discuss them, and then afterwards I'm going to give you a little booklet. And I'm going to give you some questions, and if you could take a few minutes and write some answers for me. And if your English isn't all that good, that's fine. Just do the best you can and see if you can get some ideas to me as to what some next steps might be. So is there any questions at all in this presentation? Yes, sir.
Any person can be a member of the Society of Wildlife Forensics?
Yeah, the question was, can anybody join the Society of Wildlife Forensics? And yes, you can. Yeah, if you just go on the website, and there's just instructions on how to join there. Like I said, right now it's pretty much mostly DNA stuff, and as soon as I bring up bullets and firearms, they go, "What? What's that stuff? What are you talking about?" So I think we need to get more representation from our group for sure. Any other questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, if you can get together in groups of 3 or 4, that would be great. If you would prefer not to participate in this, that's up to you. The doors aren't locked yet. So if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to answer a few questions, I would really appreciate it. That'll help me get some information to other agencies. So I'm going to leave those questions up there, And if you could answer some or all of those, that would be great.